1, 2. 1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome to the One Night Your Podcast. Is my volume good? Is my volume don't seem? 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. Am I a little louder? A little louder, y'all? Okay. 1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome. You muted right now. 1, 2, 1, 2. Welcome to the One Night Your Podcast. Okay. Share, share, share. Share. Check in and let us know where you're from. One night, you one people. What borough? What development? What state? What country? Standing man, you here? You in the building?
1, 2. I'm in the house.
Money Mike, you here?
Yeah.
Yes, you in the house?
Oh, I'm here.
Oh, okay. Just checking. We want to make sure. So share the show. Like the show. Tell people about the show. One night to one people. We appreciate our viewership. Sorry we're a little late today, but you know, the subways. I had to go to the subway and take a cab. Gotta start doing what Stan do. Just take the cab straight in. Once again, welcome to the One Night Your Podcast. We appreciate our viewership. Okay, we're going to go through our normal. We're going to go with the co-hosts. We're going to talk about our week, what we've done, and then we dedicate the rest of the show to our guests. How about that? That's how we do, right? Right, team? Yeah. Okay. So once again, my week was busy and blessed. You know, I'm grateful to just, be a resource to my community and beyond. Assistant residents, seniors, and people with their issues in public housing and beyond. There's a lot of things going on, and we fed the community on Saturday, the third Saturday of every month. The Home Sizes Coalition, we actually feed the community with a couple of faith-based partners, and it was a lady that came from 80-something Street. She heard about the community fridge that Holmes Towers has. And she was having some issues with food insecurity. And we were able to give her food, and I took her daughter number and was able to give her some resources and places because she didn't even know all the other places that she can go to get something to eat. So that was just a highlight of yesterday, just getting some things done and being in the right place, right time. We're working on the 22nd, the Home Sizes Coalition Saturday at the Isaac Center. We're hosting an entrepreneurship empowerment expo. So it's from 12 to 4 p.m. Everybody's welcome to stop by. The flyer is circulating on all our social media platforms as well as my personal ones. So please come out. It's going to be a good time, and you're welcome to come out, I guess, and hopefully stand.
I'll be out there. I'll be right there.
Give us some. One night you'll have a table.
Absolutely.
And I'll probably backtrack on something else. But other than that, I'm going to drop it to you, Money Mike.
Smooth Money Mike.
Lord. Like I said, my week was smooth. My week has been smooth. To be honest, I was telling our guests as well before that I was doing some self-tape auditions. Mm-hmm. I did one full commercial that's, I don't know. It's not like I got it. Don't be.
About to congratulate you now. What's going on?
Don't be excited yet. I mean, just a self-tape audition,
Okay.
I gotta get used to, being. I'm gonna be one of the greatest actors. I'm telling you.
I'm sure.
I'm gonna be one of the greatest actors.
And you come here and you're shy. I don't understand this. This guy acts. I gotta interrupt you. You act. Like, come on the show and give us you. Come on. Ooh, something. Come on.
That's right.
He's smooth. I know. He's smooth.
And also trying to figure out how we're going to do this Halloween event. I was supposed to do one earlier, but he's going to give me a call back.
All right.
What day is it? Saturday, right?
Well, Halloween weekend,
so we got a lot of work to do.
It don't fall on the weekend, but we're going to...
Y'all doing it on the weekend.
Yeah, we're going to see what we have on. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Is this upcoming weekend coming up? The weekend coming up?
No, not this.
So you got a little bit of time then. Okay, all right.
The 29th.
Okay,
Yeah, somewhere around that time.
all right. So let's do it. I'm with it.
But yeah, otherwise than that, like I always say, my week been smooth. So we're gonna just pass it over to Stan the man.
Okay, your mic going in and out.
I know.
All right.
Yeah, and I guess the reason why I'm questioning with the whole Ravenswood situation and wanting to do an event there is because I'm continuing to have a lot of issues with Ravenswood. There's a client, a resident that I'm working with. I'm not going to say her name because she will come on the show. But finally, she's going to be moved out supposedly tomorrow.
Okay.
You know, and this has been going on now. We're about into a month, you know, with lead confirmed in her apartment. Nobody knows what nobody's doing. You go down to the management office, again, several calls this week, you know, just to find out what's happening. They don't know what's going on at all. You know, so it's important that we get back to Ravenswood, you know, because there's a lot of information that needs to be given to the residents, especially now, because we're getting ready to enter into this whole opt-in situation with the Preservation Trust. And this is an opportunity now, you know, for us to really say what we want to say, you know, and prove that the residents don't want it, you know, and the way to do that is to go into these communities and let them know. And I know for myself, I know Saundrea and Mike, you know, we speak to residents and we kind of know, from my perspective, the majority of residents that I speak to don't want it. No. The ones that do know about it don't want it. When you explain to them what it is, they don't want it. But I know, Saundrea, you sent me an email from NYCHA, you know, so folks are being bombarded with propaganda, you know, emails, they're getting phone calls. Yeah. You have all the elected officials, you get literature, and on the walls, you got all the elected officials coming out for it now. You also have a lot of news media, you know, like the Daily News is for it, the Post is for it. So there's all of this information pushing down the residents' throat for this. Right. But there's not enough opposition, which is where we come from, and we don't have the resources that they have.
I would say the opposition is there. I know this is your time, but the opposition is there. It's just the opposition isn't seen.
Well, then I would say, so right, so we got to be seen now. Like, this is the time. If you're watching the show, and if you live in NYCHA, and if you don't want the Preservation Trust, then this is your time at this particular moment to make your voice heard, to defeat it. Because if you don't make your voice heard and they shove it down our throat, then it's going to be that. It's going to be too late, you know. So this is our time. So I'm going to give a shout out to Harvey Epstein. He's a assembly person, and normally I critique, you know, elected officials, but he came out and said he's opposed to it, you know, and that's good to hear because a lot of folks in the assembly and the city council have sold us out, you know, and I'm particularly disappointed. Some of them I've spoken to personally and was surprised at their vote. You know, that they went ahead and did that. So big shout out to him, you know, but this is why we have another gentleman on. So we're going to find out his position on it as he steps into that role. And hopefully we have another ally to defeat this because we can't allow this to happen. But residents, we got to speak up.
Right. But it's already been signed in.
It's been signed, but then they have this, from my understanding, we have a chance, there's going to be an opportunity for residents to vote. Right. And this is a chance to make our voices heard. If we're not present and we don't say what we have to say, and we allow the narrative to be what it is now, then it's going to be shoved down our throat, and there'll be no more public housing.
Yeah, and one of the issues I found out about it with Greg Russ had came to one of our meetings, and he was basically saying it's going to take 2 years, literally. Like, you know, like, it's a discussion, okay, you want it, but it's going to take a year and change, close to 2, you know, it's not a quick fix.
Right.
So, once again, the residents are still gonna be living with the inhumane conditions.
Yep.
So being that this is not a quick fix anyway, why don't you just put the money up? Because in 2015, myself and others, we were advocating for $2 billion to fix all of public housing. This was in 2015. So look where we're at now. 40 plus billion needed to preserve the portfolio that's left.
Right.
Because a lot of people don't realize that every conversion from RAD PAC is no longer NYCHA's responsibility.
Right.
So they should be gaining some capital, but you know what I'm saying, with the less that they have to do, but we're still in the same thing. So yeah, we definitely have to make our voices heard and continue to advocate and push back against it. And you know, I know my resident council president wants it. And that's all I'm gonna say. And she's telling people about it, but we have to give them the cons.
Right.
Because the pros, everybody wants their home fixed. You know what I'm saying? So when we hear that, it's like, okay, yeah, but okay, what's the aftermath of what's going to happen down the road, even with Red and Pac? But enough of that. You finished?
I do want to say, and it's insidious that they would spend any money advertising at all and doing any of that when they know that there are repairs to be needed. So that shows their poverty. I will push out this propaganda, but I'm not going to spend money on your apartment to fix your apartment. So to me, that's just insidious and it's just unacceptable.
Yeah. So we're going to welcome our guest. So the rest of this is all you, Mr. Alex Boris. Can I say your last name?
Exactly right, Alex Boris.
Okay, so I'm not a person. I'm not going to introduce him. He's going to introduce himself, but I'm just going to speak for myself. I've gotten to meet him on some campaign trails with Congresswoman Calla Maloney, and just seeing him in the community. You know, I'm on the same community board 8 with his mother, correct?
Okay.
And she's phenomenal. So, so if she's phenomenal, I know you're phenomenal. But enough of that. Please introduce yourself to our viewership. Tell us who you are. A little bit about yourself before we go into the full interview.
Yeah, I'm Alex Boris. I'm the Democratic nominee for New York State Assembly in the 73rd District. So that's Midtown East and parts of the Upper East Side. And I'm born and raised in that area. I spent my whole life on the east side of Manhattan. I grew up on 82nd and East End and 90th and Lex, and I'm at 76 now, so 6 blocks from where I grew up. I tell people I didn't make it far. I went to all public school in and around the district, PS6, Wagner, and Hunter. Of course, the lines are getting redrawn again. So PS6 is in the district, Wagner is across the street, and Hunter's across the street to the north. So my not-so-secret goal in redrawing the lines is just to get all of my schools in and be able to say I went entirely in the district.
Okay.
But my career up until this point has been in government technology. It's been in building systems to make government actually deliver on its promise. And I'm really excited to, pending November 8th, if the voters choose me, go into the legislature from there and try to make government work better for all of us.
Awesome. Give them some.
Absolutely.
Give them some. So I'll let you start.
Okay, well, I always got the tough questions now. I ran for office. I know Saundrea did, and I know how difficult it is to do that. I know for me, one of the biggest issues was raising funds, So my big question, did you take any money from any of the real estate developers, who we are against in some ways in this fight?
No, I didn't pursue any developer money. And I raised almost entirely from friends and family.
Okay, good.
I will say there was 2 exceptions of that where it was friends I went to school with and their parents were developers. So my rule is if I knew someone for a decade or more, I could talk to them.
Right.
No one pushing for anything trying to be before the legislature.
Right.
Okay, great, good. I'm glad to hear that. That's our first number 1 question.
There you go.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't see you being beholden. So I know people have issues with that, but my whole thing is, there are some that's still in office and still do it, and they do a great job. So I'm not, Stan is real strict with it, but doesn't mean, you're a friend to the show. You're on the show now. We're gonna definitely want to, I feel we will have an ally in you. You know what I'm saying, for public housing and beyond. So, and you're welcome once you get elected and do 6 months or a year or something. You're welcome to come back on, and give us some updates or something like that. We would love that.
I would love that. And let me say one other thing on campaign finance. There's a matching fund kicking in at the state level starting next year. So this was the last year with the $4,700 limits. That's coming down to $3,000, I think.
Oh, that's great. That's good.
And matching, I think it's the first $50 12 to 1, then the next 100 9 to 1, the next 100 8 to 1. So it's going to be a very different landscape running for office in the future, and I think we'll see more people-powered campaigns.
So when did that take effect? 'Cause that wasn't like that when I ran. That was just a year or so ago.
No, it starts with the next cycle. So it'll start in 2024.
Yeah, wow. Well, that's good to know because that was when I ran. I know when Saundrea runs, that's always a question: is are you viable? Mm-hmm. How much money do you have? Before they even get into your views, they want to know about how much money you got. So you almost eliminated if you don't have the money from the start. So I'm glad to hear that. That's good.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So, but that's why people power campaigns are, powerful, and even small donations help.
Right.
Because if you get a multitude of it, if you think about it, NYCHA can elect every
Absolutely.
city-wide position.
Absolutely.
Literally. NYCHA residents. We're a city within a city. I've been saying that for
Absolutely.
a long time. And we're totally neglected. And I'm going to speak about something probably on another show because I'm looking at my old neighborhood and how it's just not being taken care of. I've been over there, so we're going to have to go over there to McKinley houses. And I'm not going to call out any elected officials up there yet in the Bronx. But no, I'm coming for you because when I go over there and I see the conditions, it's just horrible. So correct me if I'm wrong. You won't have any NYCHA in your
Correct. With the current lines in the 73rd, it's one of, I don't want to say the only, there might be others, but it's the only one I know of that has no NYCHA in the district at all. But, just to the north is the 68th, which I think is the highest concentration of NYCHA.
Right.
So it's just the way the map was drawn, this particular district happens to be, more well off and has no NYCHA anywhere in it.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm not sure if Assemblywoman Rebecca Seawright has any.
I think she has one. I think Robbins.
Yes,
yeah.
Which is part of us, but there where it said so she does have that one. Okay. She's great. So that's going to be a nice ally. And
Yeah, definitely.
Working together. So I'm happy for you. I know you're getting in, so I'm speaking it in existence.
Absolutely.
So I want to throw out, a lot of residents in public housing are behind on their rent, due to the pandemic. And NYCHA was telling residents to apply for ERAP. And a lot of residents that did have issues, they went to the welfare for a one-shot deal, and they said no, ERAP. That was the whole thing, ERAP. They wasn't even giving, the city was not giving out any, to my knowledge, any one-shot deals. This is what I was told. So when ERAP came and went, to my understanding, I don't know a NYCHA resident that got it. I've been hearing
I haven't either.
Nobody, got it across the board, so that's a problem. And now they're doing the letters, and they're about to take residents back to court. People are getting phone calls, people getting letters with their budget letter, with their breakdown of their rent. So I want to know do you know if there's another wave of ERAP coming, and how could residents, I know you're not in office yet, but is there another wave coming, and what are you hearing about ERAP, and do you know if there's any other resources for the residents? Because New York is already in a horrible homeless
Absolutely.
crisis. It's too many people unhoused, too many people in the streets, too many people in the shelters and so forth, or living with loved ones, in overcrowded tenement-like conditions because, they don't want to be in a shelter, right? Or they don't want to be in the streets, so they rather be on the floor or on a couch or double, tripled up in rooms, which is just so unhealthy. So, so anything that you might have heard about ERAP or, that you could give us any information?
Yeah, well, especially with the eviction moratorium going away, we need this help now more than ever. I know the governor asked for another $2 billion from the Fed. I think it's estimated we need about 1.7 more for everything that's outstanding. Now, the good news is 2 weeks ago, the feds released another $100 million to New York State. The bad news is that's $100 million out of $1.7 billion that we think is needed to still do this. And the reason the feds are doing that is other states haven't used their allocation. And so New York is saying, hey, we have a crisis here, bring that in. But we can't just be relying on the scraps that other states aren't using, given, exactly what you laid out and the crisis levels we have here. Our shelters are at capacity at their highest amount they've been. People don't feel safe in the ones that exist. So everyone sees people out on the street and they know that there's a problem with people being unhoused. But to your point, there's the invisible problem of people staying with relatives, bunking up in these conditions that are far beyond what anyone should be living in. So we need this help to stop it from getting any worse, let alone everything we have to do to actually solve the problem that already exists and those that are already unhoused.
Okay, so
You're saying there's some money coming, but not nearly enough.
I think it's a drop in the bucket compared to what we need. Yeah.
Wow.
And they're probably missing NYCHA once again.
Yeah, we always, I think no NYCHA got, you said nobody got the ERAP. Nobody.
To my knowledge,
not that I know either. Nobody.
I can't say 100%, but I'm about 99, 98%. I don't know anybody, so
Neither do I.
gotta stay. I don't know anybody in NYCHA that has it.
And the funding problem should be the hard part, finding the money, right? Should be, but we all know the hard part is often actually applying and getting the benefits that
Right.
people deserve, that they even qualify for. And we were talking a little bit before, but what I did before I ran for office was work in government technology, and for the past year and a half before running, actually building systems to distribute aid, that coronavirus-based aid that states and localities were giving to help people pay rent, to help them pay their electric bill, their water bill. And the problem was that they weren't reaching out to actually help people and let them know. We're so used to government failing that people would assume the program wasn't going to work for them. And often it wouldn't. It'd be a 15-page printed out form, and the money would run out by the time you got everything through.
Right.
Wow.
And so we would figure out who was eligible. We would text them. We would build a form online that was as easy to use as possible. All the information we already had would be pre-filled. And get people through the system in 15 minutes and be clear about when they're going to get benefits or not. You start running government that way, people start having faith that they actually are getting what they're entitled to.
Wow. Give them something for that.
Yeah, give them some. That's innovative
Something
and different.
needed, yeah.
So
You're going to be an asset in the assembly, definitely.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I got the question. So now, I shout out Harvey Epstein. What is your position on the Preservation Trust? Are you for it, against it, and what's your message?
Well, I'm glad it's opt-in. I think that's the key part and I'm hopeful. We have a $40 billion deficit for repairs that need to be done, and we've been struggling to come up with a program that can actually do that. I think RAD was deficient in all kinds of ways, and I'm excited for ways that can bring more money into the system. Now, it has to be opt-in, and people have to have full information about it when they're choosing that, and if it's all people talking on one side and not on the other, that's not a fair election, even if you open it up for that. I think we're desperate to get those repairs done and get money in, and so we need to preserve the rights of the people who are already in the system and who will be affected by it, and it's all hands on decks to find out a solution that actually gets those repairs done.
Well, I'm gonna push back a little bit.
Please.
Because in my opinion, even though in my distrust and watching how dysfunctional even resident council elections have been, so I've seen, some of the most corrupt stuff dealing with that. So I'm concerned in this process with this opt-in that it's going to be legitimate, and I'm concerned, when we don't have the resources for all the organizers like a Stan or a Saundrea or and various organizations that are out here, we don't have the resources to send emails and robocalls and all this other stuff, to these residents. So it's almost like going into a basketball game, but the deck is stacked against you, because you don't have the resources that others have. And that's my concern. Now, if it was a legitimate opportunity that everybody's on a level playing field, then that's one thing, but it's just not. And then I guess the other concern I have for it is that if people do opt in, not fully understanding what it is, and then we go to the situation where NYCHA defaults, and doesn't pay back this debt that they're taking on. From my understanding, there's no mechanism in place to do anything, to stop anything. It's like the governor can't come in and fix it. The mayor can't fix it. Congress can't fix it. It's just over. Now this private entity will now have this portfolio. And I don't think there's anything in this whole preservation trust that stops that or puts a foot stop to that. It's just nothing that I saw. So maybe there's something, I don't know, but I didn't see it.
Yeah, no, I think those are the two things that everyone should be worried about. The trust is set up to be a public benefit corporation and be publicly held and have all of those same protections. But you're right, it's when defaults happen that if it goes to court, what happens after that? And I'd love for there to be a backstop as part of this. This can't be another way to privatize NYCHA. I think that's what no one wants out of this. And I entirely agree on you have to have elections that are fair, and there's all kinds of ways to change things behind the scenes. If one side is doing robocalls and the other isn't, that's not a fair election. And so, I'd be open to exploring ways to ensure that both sides are heard and that all of that message gets shared, and maybe there's equal access. You have similar rules around unionization drives of what the union's allowed to do, right, so that you don't have just the company talking to the workers, et cetera. Maybe there's something to explore there. I'd love to talk more.
Okay.
Wow. I think, yeah, I mean, again, I'm against it, but if there was ways, I mean, we're going to have this fight no matter what. I mean, 'cause it's here, so we can't ignore it. It's here now. But as long as we have a way to fight back equally, which and I don't know how that's going to be done. Are they going to fund organizations so that we have access to literature to send out? Are they going to, just how can you do that? And I guess in this short amount of time, because it's like 100-day period they're talking about, and I just know for me, it's just difficult to get the word out, and it's without the resources. And it's like we're fighting against an entity that has much more than we have. And that's just my concern about it.
Totally. No, I think the model of how we think about union elections can be not a perfect one, but one to learn from here, where obviously a company is in such an advantageous place. And so we limit kind of what a company can do with required mandatory meetings and what can be done there. And we give access to unions to make certain calls. Now, in my opinion, not enough. I don't think we've shifted it in quite an equal way. And certainly we haven't on this issue in particular. But ultimately, giving people a choice and making sure that's a fair choice, I think, is something that everyone should get behind.
Awesome. Yeah. Thinking about NYCHA, when I was campaigning, it was a lot of doors. I was able to go into buildings, just pull the door and it was open. So they were unlocked. And unlocked buildings, it means it's unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
I believe his name was Derek Waller from ABC News. Did an interview with me, I believe it was last year, about security cams, because the former mayor was supposed to be, they're not in every public housing development. And there's also the artificial technology and the surveillance, so, a lot of people don't want cameras, and I get that, but we also want to be safe. So, having cameras in our developments and also making sure our doors are locked, that's a priority. Because we can't wait, they're big on these e-bikes now because of fires. This big old letter comes out, in I guess some type of order that no resident can have these e-bikes in their home. But NYCHA has policies that they want to work on, but there's still things that's supposed to keep us safe. So they're not as, how can I say, really on it with the cameras, even though the cameras and the locked doors, even though I know they get broke. I understand that. But even if they get broke, you have to keep fixing it. You have to keep locking it. Because we can't wait for the next murder, rape, or something like that to happen. From a stranger, somebody just wandering in a building, which we hear this so often on the news. And it can happen. So as an assembly member, I know you'll have access to funding. You'll have access to write bills. What's that? Co-author bills, mm-hmm. Sponsor bills. I'm trying to get that all out. Mm-hmm. Is there anything you could think of for NYCHA to see that all, like we have, our doors are locked where we at, Isaac and Holmes. We have cameras, and then in Isaac houses, there's cameras in every hallway, on the floors rather than the exit. In Holmes Towers, it's like every 2 or 3 floors. So they didn't really get what we got, unfortunately. And we have the same property manager. But like I said, as an assembly member, what will you be able to do to see the safety of, even though we're not your constituents, we are your constituents?
Absolutely. No, it's a system that obviously affects everyone in the city, and the state has such a huge role. So you're right. The having cameras, having working locks should be the basics. Right. And we know there's a lot of red tape that gets in the way of installing them. We find that, and some people say red tape and they mean actual security checks. I just mean delayed bureaucratic nonsense where you have money sitting in an account for years that has been allocated to actually spend on the cameras. And I think you're right to bring up the point of they break and then you just replace them. That shouldn't be that hard. We see this in a lot of government systems. So the governor just announced that there are going to be cameras in every subway car. There's already cameras in every station, right? But we only check whether those cameras work every 6 months. It's a camera. You should know when it's not working the second it stops working.
Right.
And requiring a manual audit every 6 months to see if it's working means it's not actually there. Right. So even just having a camera, having things that are locked, can prevent the crimes from happening in the first place if people feel like, hey, that means you're actually going to get caught. But there needs to be a credible knowing the camera is working. Having a broken camera that everyone knows is broken and is never going to be fixed does no benefit.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So, and even some places have, and I don't know if it's anywhere actually in the city, but they have things that look like they're working, the cameras, but they're really not, because they don't want to pay for the security. You know, I'm not saying that's the city doing it, but that has been known. You know, okay, well. Yeah, because we, we're in a state of emergency. We were declared by the former Governor Cuomo, and unfortunately, we're still living in bad conditions. You know, as you know, I'm a NYCHA resident. What's your thought on the possible water crisis that's, because I now, and a lot of residents, we have another bill. Like, I brush my teeth, that's it. That's the only reason I use the tap water. You know, and I have to bathe in it, of course. But, some people, they don't even do that. They use bottled water. So we're spending more money now because we don't trust NYCHA.
Right. That's money out of your pocketbook
Exactly.
for a basic necessity. We're talking about water here, and we like to
Clean.
talk about New York City as the best water in the world, except
Not in NYCHA.
yeah, exactly. And the testing can't just be Mayor Adams having a glass at the end and saying it's fixed.
With something probably.
Give them credit for showing up and drinking it, but that is not the policy So absolutely. I mean, it's similar to what we were just talking about with the cameras, is that people need to have confidence in the system working. And so you have to realize that when you take a hit to that confidence, when you have a report like this, that the water isn't safe, you need to compensate. You need to do a lot more to make that safe. So we need regular testing. We need that to be shared with all of the residents, and not like on a delayed cadence where it's like, oh, maybe it'll come out. There's so much that government does where we do an audit and then we manually prepare a report and then people put it out. In the 21st century, you can just have a sensor that goes to a dashboard that anyone can log into.
That's so key, and thank you for saying that, because I shared last year, I went to my management to find out about the water when they did the tanks inspections on the water, and I was not allowed to take notes. I was not allowed to take a picture of it. I was not allowed to get a copy of it, and it was just crazy.
And yet they say trust it and drink it.
Right. So
what message are they sending?
What I had to do, and I'm not gonna say what I did, but I read it out loud to myself.
Right.
Y'all can figure that out, But the point is, like, why? And like you said, it should be dashboard. We should know what we're drinking has been tested, because anything that's tested is only good from the date it was tested. Let's be clear. From HIV to whatever. People go, yeah, okay, but what did you do right after that, right?
Right.
So, but at least that gives us some kind of, assurance that, they care and they're doing what's right. But to have it posted in the inside and with your manager, and you have to actually ask to see it, and then you can't take the information with you, and it was some words in there that I wasn't familiar with, and one of them was debris, but it was it was a long word, but I looked it up later and it was debris, and it's like, okay, I know what debris is, but the point is, and they need to do that. So and could that could be some kind of law, right? Can y'all
absolutely
write some bills and laws to, because that's what we need. We need allies and as elected officials to understand the systemic things that we've been going through. And I'm going to be leaning on you, and definitely, Rebecca Seawright, and I love her, and I know Eddie Gibbs, I'm going to lean on y'all to like try to get some things done, because it's really hard living in public housing. The way they speak to us, the way they treat us. My bathroom conditions is the same for 2 years. And I don't know what's going on. And yes, I advocate for a whole lot of people, and I do advocate for myself, but my whole thing is, I know it's documented, because I was on the worst landlord list with the Jamani Williams, public advocate, 2 years in a row. So it went from whatever it was to even worse. But they broke my wall before. So who wants to go through all of that again to wait another year or two to have the same issue. But yeah, okay, so definitely we're gonna have an ally in you.
Yeah, and we, imagine when you think about sensors and reporting out, like imagine if we treated weather this way, right? Like we scan the temperature, and then 4 days later they say, it was 68 degrees 4 days ago, and you're trying to plan your day and what to wear, right? No, you just have a thermometer. You know at that minute what it is, right?
Yeah.
And that's all of these things. It's not difficult technology. It's either fear of transparency, or it's just how it's always been done. And you mentioned legislation. There's absolutely legislative ways to go about this. I'm also really excited about ways that we can pilot things. I think too often government thinks about, hey, we have to pass the whole program, and that's going to be, $80 billion, and we don't know if it's going to work. And the solution is start with $1 million, or start with 5,000. I've worked on so many government projects where I get paid literally $3,000 to test it out. And the system eventually, if it worked, might be worth 10 million, 12 million, et cetera. But the point is people deserve to see it in action and see it small scale, and we'll learn what works and what doesn't from that. And that there's more ability for individual legislators here and there to pilot things. I'm excited about being able to do that.
Okay, now.
Well, I know we're getting ready to go into the cold season. I guess it's a add on to what you're saying. I know, unfortunately, there's going to be a lot of phone calls with people that have no heat. There's going to be a lot of phone calls when the gas is cut off. And people have spent a tremendous amount of money just to survive these scenarios that sometimes go on for months. So I know Mike Gennaro put a bill out there that was supposed to get some of the money back to residents. I don't know what happened to the bill. I think it may have died somewhere in committee or something. But is that something that you're going to bring back to the table? Because we know the problem's going to happen. Because it happens every year. And I'm sure it's going to happen again.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know the result of Senator Gene Norris's bill. I'll double check on that one. But if you're not getting the services that you're promised, absolutely you should be getting that money back. And this goes to the trust in government. How can we have people saying, we know this is going to be broken? And you're right. You know it's going to be broken.
Right.
But that can't be the way that we run the city or any part of it. People need to say, I expect it to work, and I'm surprised when it's broken.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, unfortunately, I know the way. I hate this time of year because we know it's going to come. And we've had scenarios where people can't cook for Thanksgiving. The stories are heartbreaking as the holidays come around, because that's when the conditions really get to you. When you're trying to have family come over, you're trying to have enjoy your holidays, and you having stuff like this, and you're cold and your gas don't work. So hopefully something could be done.
And why aren't we doing the maintenance and the testing, over the summer when people don't need
Right.
it,
Right.
when it's cheaper, right? Yeah. That's the time to be looking at it, not when you're putting the stress on the system and it's a week before Thanksgiving.
We need you to write a bill on that.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Right.
We need that. So this question is more for public and private housing, because we don't always just rest on, public housing. You have, how can I say it? So you pay your rent, but you don't get repairs, okay? I've said that in a press conference before too. You pay your rent and you don't get repairs. So that's in public and private housing. Rent abatements. Is there some type of, maybe, I'm putting it out there, can you maybe craft the law, because people do not have gas, do not have heat, inoperable elevators, and NYCHA and some places it's hard to get a rent abatement, but they're paying their full rent and they're not getting the services.
Absolutely. So
can there be some kind of, because I believe a law, some type of bill law put together on that would put their feet to the fire. You know what I'm saying? And make them more accountable.
Right.
Because then they'll know if they don't do it, then this can happen.
Yeah.
So is there something?
If there's a requirement without enforcement, it's not really a requirement.
Right.
And so we have required heat, we have required repairs, we have required accessibility, but if it's not enforced, then what does that mean? I'd love to talk more about ways to do that. People need to know that they have to take care of their residents, and that the laws actually mean something.
Maybe we could work on it. It'll be your bill.
I'd love to.
I'll be behind, because it's people that could, it's we the people can help stir it. So we'll talk definitely when you get in office about something like that, because that would help a lot of people. whatever it is, that rent abatement, because that's so hard to get for. Look at this housing calling. Why is housing calling me?
Wow.
Something's
See,
off.
see, this is the propaganda.
They heard you were thinking
They
about
literally
it.
calling you on your phone.
Well, it's the bill, so because the elevator, I reported the elevator
Okay.
was out, but
Okay.
still, it's like these robocalls, because this is what it is. I should put it on the line, but no, it's a robocall, but they're calling from the call center. But yeah, that'll be good to work on something like that, because we need relief. People need relief. Several of us sued NYCHA on December 13th of 2019 out of Isaac and Holmes Towers, and the case just went, and they never held NYCHA in contempt. There was, I can't tell you how many inspections on the elevator, how many inspections on the ground. HUD was there, HPD was there, and stuff was coming to my home, because I was one of the outreach people, so that the finders were coming to me as well as our attorneys. For Isaacs, I was one of the, because when they called the case, it was Coleman versus, I love that though, Coleman versus, NYCHA. But with that said, what can we do? What can we get done?
Well, I think some laws should be passed, and you're in the position to do that. And also, on that note, even in terms of when you go down to the management office, I mean, this is pure frustration and pure lack of professionalism. So I want to ask you a question, because I know a manager in the office told me that they can't speak to me as an advocate. Now, I could be an advocate, I could be a lawyer, I could be a friend of the NYCHA resident, I could be whoever, family. So is that appropriate that a government, because they work for the government, right? They're employees of the city, to tell a resident something like that, well, and then usher them into a side room, so to speak, so nobody can hear the conversation, which is a way to not be held accountable, because all the resident wanted was somebody else to hear what's being promised, so we could follow up and see if it's going to be done. So is that legal for a management office to tell somebody, no, you can't be in this conversation?
I'm not a lawyer, and I am not familiar if that is, but that sounds highly unusual to me. I haven't heard of something like that. I mean, there's privacy laws, but that's to protect the person if they want privacy, right? So that sounds very weird to me.
And what can be done on a state level? Because I know it's happening in Ravenswood. I know it's happening all over in various developments across the city. And I'm thinking from a legislative standpoint, this is one way we could hold NYCHA accountable. To say you can't treat residents in this disrespectful manner. That should be against the law itself to be treated this way. I heard one resident tell the lady, lead is not an emergency. That's what when they pulled her to the side, that's what I overheard. And you tell her somebody that has lead in her apartment that lead's not, and she got a baby. How's that possible?
I think you used the perfect word. I think disrespectful is the only word that comes to mind. I mean, lead is an emergency, no matter what, especially when you have a young child. That's exactly when it's the biggest emergency. That's awful to hear.
Right.
Yeah. It's unfortunate with lead poisoning. We always focus on the kids.
Right.
There's also issues with adults
from
headaches. If you look it up, because I got a little medical background.
Right.
If you look it up and really research it, some people are going through some issues because they, as adults, like their kid might be inflicted, but they're inflicted as well, and they don't even know it. So I always tell people, if your kid has it, you need to get yourself tested, because there's something. And then NYCHA or either NYCHA or that private, housing, they're responsible for you, and those are lawsuits. But I want to segue a little bit. Why did you run for assembly?
Yeah.
Give you that.
No, I appreciate that. This is, as I said at the start, this is where I grew up. And so the people in the district are my friends, my family of people I went to school with. And when they think about Albany, well, they don't often, they're living their own lives. But when they think about Albany, they think about dysfunction. Okay. Think about corruption. They think about inefficiency. And we've touched upon it a little bit, but I've spent my career making government work better. Okay. That's been my focus, is taking the promise that we hear and everything you hear up to and on bill signing and making sure that we go all the way through to delivering an actual result to people. You know, no one's fed when the bill is signed, and no one's water is kept safe when the bill is signed. It's how you actually implement it and get there. And, you know, we've talked about what I did directly before running, where I was helping to distribute this aid. I've also just built systems to make government work better, to have VA hospitals, better staff so they could take care of their veterans, to helping the CDC better track epidemics. And so when I hear all my neighbors saying, oh, Albany, that place never works, and you get an opportunity to take what I've been doing privately at cities and states throughout the country and bring it home to my district in New York, that's a pretty special opportunity.
Wow, give them some. Is there a particular issue you want to work on?
Yeah,
Day one.
There's a lot of issues. You know, a lot of people have asked since the primary, oh, what are you excited to work on? And I say, I'm lucky in that I actually want to do the things on my website. You know, a lot of people, they run for office and their website is rainbows and butterflies and give everyone a birthday cake. And it's, every single one of the things on my website is tied to a specific bill that exists or a bill that I want to write. And so there's a lot of different things that I want to do. You know, the residents of the 73rd District talk a lot about feeling safe and what can be done there, and the criminal justice system writ large. They talk a lot about housing. You know, it is the wealthiest district in New York State, and still people feel insecure in their housing. And not affordable, right? Rents going up, crazy amounts, not being able to find a place. You have more and more people watching their kids move away because their kids can't afford to live anywhere nearby. You have challenges to the environment. You have challenges to reproductive health that we need to do more to protect in New York. But at the end of the day, I want a government that is actually working. And so regardless of the issue, I'm the one looking for the opportunity to make that system work a little bit better and make it actually deliver what we're promising. I always say I'm not out for any moral victories. Moral victories don't feed your family. I'm out there to actually deliver the results.
And can you say your website?
The website is alexboris.nyc, and Boris is B as in boy, ORES.NYC.
Now I got a question for you on the affordable housing issue. We are in a housing crisis, and I don't see it going away no time soon, unfortunately. You know, one of my things is I think the AMI and MIH system that they're using for affordable housing is skewed. You know, where you have incomes coming in from neighborhoods that don't right from Westchester. So I'm in Bed-Stuy, and you're building this multi-unit building, and maybe 20% is affordable.
And it's saying like 65% AMI.
It's just craziness. So then nobody in the neighborhood can move in there at all. You know, then there's an influx of others into the neighborhood. And I'm not talking about race, I'm talking about income levels, you know, which prices people out. You know, so is there any legislation that could be written to address that?
Definitely. We need to have AMI levels that actually allow people to live there. You get to 65% AMI, you're talking about $3,000 a month for one bedroom. That's crazy. And yet that's below median in Manhattan, which is itself
area median income people.
The average rent in New York is $2,500. That's the average rent. I mean, so.
Well, this summer, Manhattan for listed places got up to 5,000 in 1 month.
Wow.
And it settled around 4,000. Around 4,000. I mean, it's you can't have a city if the only people that can afford to live there can afford to pay 4,000 a month.
Exactly.
So then why do you think it's been difficult? Because we all see it, right? And I guess private developers benefit and profit, you know, from the system as it's currently set up. You know, so why is it difficult? Do we not have enough elected officials with the will to push that? I mean, why has it been so difficult to change it when it's so obvious that it ain't working?
Yeah, I mean, do we have another hour to dive in? There's so many pieces of this, but it's, you know, it starts from NYCHA was mostly built from 1945 to 1965, and then the state backed away from being involved in the market. So then we're relying on private developers to build, and we're not building enough. And so we have this incredibly limited housing stock that people continue to bid on, and it makes it impossible to stay there. And then we tend to only build these like big luxury buildings in places where we need housing at all income levels, but
Right.
that becomes what's profitable. There's 2 developments being proposed now just outside of my district where they're building, I want to say 40, 50
You
stories.
talking about by Penn Station? Are you talking about that?
No, on the east side, Rebecca C. writes. But
Okay.
yeah,
That's
Penn
another one.
Station's its
That's
own
another
thing.
one.
But,
Yep.
but the
Mhm.
ones I'm bringing up, there's 2 of them where they're building 40, 50 stories, and it's fewer apartments than the buildings it's replacing.
Wow.
Right? That's crazy. And so, yeah, we need a lot more housing.
And that's all luxury, right? So
Oh,
they're
yeah.
taking away housing stock
Yeah.
and then putting more housing stock into it that costs more than that's just
And then not only that, that's the hard stuff. Building is hard. We're not making best use of what already exists. So we have all these, less so Manhattan, but in the other boroughs and even outside of New York City, we have these accessory dwelling units. People have converted a garage into an apartment or a basement into an apartment, and right now it's a black market, and sometimes they're unsafe. And we have the ability to, with a little bit of funding, say, hey, make improvements to make it safe, and let's legalize that apartment so it
Right.
can be rented and be out there for more. And you also have vacant apartments. You have
I
these
was
things being
gonna ask you that.
warehoused. Yep.
Yeah.
And people are doing that because they're holding out for more rent.
Right.
Or sometimes they say, hey, it's fallen into disrepair, and I can't make enough on the rent to repair it, to pay for it. And we
Right.
get into this weird place where politicians say either, well, you should eat all of that cost, I don't care. Or on the flip side, well, put that all on the tenant. When the solution is government should step up with some of those funds,
Right.
right? It's totally legitimate for an owner to say, hey, I can't afford to do this and I can't put it all on the tenant. And government should come in and say, okay, we'll give you a property tax discount, or we'll help
Right.
fund the repairs if you rent it out, if you bring that back to market, if you make it available for housing. And that's way cheaper than building new ones itself. So there's so many ways we need to attack the problem. We need all of them.
Can you imagine how that would impact the homeless crisis?
right. And,
Homelessness crisis.
and even the vouchers. I mean, 'cause I
Yeah,
speak to a lot
yeah.
of home like people call and the vouchers don't pay enough.
Yeah.
And also,
And haven't
this-
been taking applications for like a decade.
Right.
It's crazy.
And,
Yeah.
and I have one person that's in the system now that I know, and $5,000 is what they're paying for the apartment. But then the voucher ends in 2 years. So then the landlord's like, okay, now you have to go, or you could stay if you could pay for this $5,000, which that obviously they can't do, which means you gotta go back into the system possibly. And so is there anything on the legislative level that could be done about that to raise the voucher levels?
Yep.
And to stop landlords from doing that?
Yeah, well, both are on my platform of we need to increase the funding for the vouchers. We need to be increasing that's there. But also, people aren't supposed to decline you because of your source of income.
Right.
You're not supposed to be declined because of the voucher. And, in different programs, there's supposed to be limits of they can only turn down like 2 people in a row. You can't turn down 3. You have to take 1 out of 3
I didn't
people
know
that
that.
come in. But we don't track it.
That's where you
Because that's how people are stuck.
Right. And so unless you have 3 people that applied that line up and say, hey, all 3 of us were denied, there's no enforcement of it. And it goes back to your point of how you can have a requirement without enforcement.
Right.
You need to have a little bit of if we wrote the law, if we're saying it needs to operate this way, we need to put a little into making sure that that's actually followed.
So then that means the landlord denied this problem. I was homeless. I'm not afraid to say that. And I know it was difficult to get out of the system because A, the vouchers didn't pay enough, and B, when you're homeless, there's a stigma. The landlord don't want you. You don't come and tear my apartment up, and all the rest of that. So they do deny, and it's pervasive. So you're saying that's against the law, and it just has to be enforced?
There's details on different programs. I'm talking about one. I don't want to speak universally,
Right.
but yeah, there's government paid programs where it says you need to take a certain percentage. You can't just keep saying no based
Right.
on this, and we're not really tracking that enforcement.
Okay, that's good to know. And you're gonna be in there fighting for this, right?
Absolutely. And I'll follow up afterwards. I'll send you the program.
I want to know. Please do.
No, so we can share.
Yeah,
'cause
absolutely.
People need to know that they have these
Absolutely.
rights. Yeah.
Right.
So what's your stance on bail reform? How do you feel about it? Is there anything you want to help, steer it in a hopefully a better direction? Because I was at a resident association meeting, and somebody came to the office. It was Hilda Solomon's husband, whatever his name is, and he works for the city. I don't know if he works for something in the DA's office, something like that. He works, and he had the propaganda against bail reform, and they gave out some literature. They had an article, and he kept saying, they're using this poster boy. They're using this poster boy, and I knew who he was talking about. And when he finished, I stood up. I said, that poster boy has a name. It's Khalif Browder. And that bothered me. And, it was a man of color. He's a black man. And, my council president's Caucasian. And, she's for it. And she was like, where do I go? Where do I testify? But to know that so many black and brown people have been in the system and spent 2-3 years in regular lockup, not in that. And 2 or 3 years is literally like spending time, state time. But they're, in the jails because they can't afford to, bail. Like nobody could bail him out, So what is your stance on that? Because I hear the people outcry, oh, no. But it's not about just locking people up and not giving them their due process. So that's very problematic for me. So what's your stance?
Absolutely. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. My grandfather was a NYPD officer on the East Side, the 2-5. My uncle is a state trooper in Jersey. I think traditional public safety resources are sometimes necessary, and I think everyone deserves to feel safe. And not only feel safe, but be safe. But because that's so important, we really need to focus on what works and what doesn't, and have that lead the conversation. And bail reform has absorbed 99% of the oxygen on this issue, when it's, at the wildest estimates, looking at the data, 1% of the crime. And I wouldn't even buy that 1%.
Okay.
But I'm saying that's what people who are saying we need to roll back, when they point to the data, they're saying it's this amount, and they're claiming 1%. And I don't think it's taking up 1% of the conversation, and we need to be thinking much broader about that. So I'm glad you brought up Khalif Browder, and I'm glad you pointed out that he has a name.
I used to work out at the 19th too. So.
Did you?
Yeah, civilian though. Yeah.
So he as you know, but for anyone listening, was arrested for allegedly stealing a backpack, ended up not even being prosecuted because the person recanted their story, or I think left the city actually and wouldn't even testify. But even if you assume that he had stolen the backpack, by statute, he should not have been held pre-trial more than 6 months. But he was in jail for 3 years, 17 months of which were in solitary.
Yeah.
Insane.
And the reason is because we only count time against that 6-month clock that the prosecutor specifically asks for. So if you come to court and the prosecutor says, Judge, I need a week, and the judge says, well, the next court date is 2 months away, we only count a week against that 6-month clock, and the defendant stays in jail for 2 months.
I did not know that. That's crazy.
And so, when I talk to people about public safety, and I try to talk broadly about the problems, and I talk about the risk coming in from guns, and I talk about the risk of not having working subway cameras, and I talk about all these other impacts, but I also say the bottleneck in public safety and criminal justice is the court system. It's these excessively long trials where we're not guaranteeing people their right to the speedy trial. And the way to do that is actually to expand the number of judges. And that is something that's set by New York State. So I talk to people and say, you have people that are, regardless of what you roll back bail, et cetera, you're going to have some people that are remanded before trial. You're going to have some people that are staying in Rikers. They shouldn't be staying any more than is necessary if people are there before a trial, right? So if you're coming at this from a place of, I want criminal justice reform, I want people not locked up, you should want quicker trials. If you're coming from the other side, if you're saying you're one of the people who are just like, all I care about is public safety, when I talk to those residents, what they say is, you have all of these recidivists, you have all of these repeat offenders being released. They're released awaiting trial. So you actually want to get prosecution. What you need is a trial. And so we're all actually on the same team of, it shouldn't, whether you're in jail or not, should not be decided by how much you have to pay or what's done in the 24 hours after you're arrested. It should be through a trial. Right. And we've gotten so far away from actually focusing on how we can guarantee that right to a speedy trial, which will make us safer and guarantee rights. Right. That's the conversation we should be having.
I got a question. I got a question for him.
You know, with Khalif Brower, and I'm glad you brought up judges, because he came before the district attorney in the Bronx. She was the judge then, Clark. Mm-hmm. She was a judge, and he came before her several times, and she didn't even release this guy. And to me, I'm just like baffled that the Bronx actually elected this woman. You know, and I know it was something with the former one, and you know, there was little kooks going on, but the whole thing is like, what were people thinking? Because that alone, she shouldn't have been a DA. Right. Shouldn't have been a district attorney. And my point.
And we're talking about one case, right?
Right.
This is
we don't
happening.
know how many.
It's probably pervasive through the system.
All over. And it's, you know, we can't. We've taken for granted that trials should be beyond their statutory requirement. That it's not. You know, there's so many things outrageous about that case. And one of many is that he was in jail for 3 years when by statute it shouldn't have been any more than 6 months, right? He shouldn't have been at all. I want to make sure I say that. But the fact that we have statutes but they're ignored or, you know, but we get around them because of these requirements, we should actually be funding the system such that we can guarantee people that right to a speedy trial.
Because also, I know you got to go. I know you
I got a question for you.
Yeah. Because when we think about him committing suicide, and I don't know his background, but being in the box, solitary confinement, for so long, months and years, and I know people that have said if they've been in there for close to a year. These people from back in the days, like, just what it does to a person's mental health. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and I know corrections has the policy, CCC, custody care control. They're 3 C's they go by. You're not putting somebody in the box for that long, you know. So it's bigger than, it has something to do with Clark and every judge he went before, you know, his attorney, you know, and then just being housed and how he was treated, you know, with the correction officers and stuff like that. Like, there has to be some protections. You know, I know the Bureau of Prisons, they do and they know about things, but that's more of the upstate. You know, when you're doing state time, they're really on top of stuff, to my knowledge, because I've spoken to people. But, you know, who's helping the people that's in regular lockup? You know, like, who's advocating for them besides their family? Because if you don't hear from your loved one, you know, and they're in a box, and maybe they might bring them out for a call, or I don't know how that works. Right. And who's monitoring this
and here's someone who, you know, all evidence points to being innocent.
Right, exactly.
Right, and this is when people, you talk about Rikers, everyone there is a human being, but in particular, it's people awaiting trial, which means some decent percentage of those are innocent. Yeah. And so we as a society need to have Rikers be a place, or wherever people are housed, be a place that we're comfortable with innocent people being. And that sometimes shifts mentality. It shouldn't, you know, everyone's a human being, but I try to get people to see, you know, themselves in who's held there.
I'm glad you knew about him. No, thank you for that. At least you're up on it. You're good.
Now, I got a question now. So what can be done on a legislative level? Because I know a lot of NYCHA residents have appeal issues, and then there's HPD. So HPD, if you're a private individual, will go in and fine you and do liens and do all the rest of that. But when it's public housing, they don't do that. And so what can be done? Because in all reality, yes, we need funding for NYCHA. We want that. But if HPD did its job, you know, which is to protect residents of the city of New York, which in my mind should be if you live in public housing or not, what can be done to make them do their job? Because there's this covenant between HPD and NYCHA that I think is illegal. It shouldn't exist.
I would love to talk more about it. I tend to not want to speak out of turn and to focus on the things that I really know and can change. I like to be data driven on this. So I would love to talk more about.
I'm gonna send you some stuff.
Please. This is good. This is the start of a conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'd love to learn more.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. So we didn't hit our hour mark, a little over, but that's okay. Is there anything you want to share with us before we wind down? what's on the horizon? How is campaigning? Like, talk to us. And with these lines being drawn, has your council member, did that change, or you still have your same city council?
I think I'm gonna in the end still have Julie Menon as my city council member, but also my lines are being redrawn again. So who knows after that? No, I think I appreciate everyone. Campaigning, you have so many people come out and volunteer.
Right.
And advocate, whether it was for me or one of my opponents, right, be engaged in the civic process. And we don't do a good enough job of plugging those people in after the campaign. And so I try to say, hey, stay involved, whether that's community board, right, or whether that's joining a local political club, or whether that's getting involved in your building. But the other thing I'd say is that, you talked about we're going to work on some legislation together. Legislators want those ideas, the big issues we're asked about all of the time, but sometimes it's a small, not in the number of people it affects, but small in that it's like a minor change, but could impact millions of people, or that just doesn't rise up to what's reading in the news. Like, individual citizens coming together with those ideas is so powerful. So, I'll give an example, and this is not a big bill. This is the opposite. This is the spectrum that's incredibly small, but probably one of the first I'm going to introduce is if you are a optometry student and you study outside of New York State, doctor of optometry, you're not allowed to apprentice in New York State.
Say that again?
So you're an optometry student of any school that's not in New York State. You can't come apprentice in New York State, which means you can't then start your career in New York State, which means you probably settle outside of it.
Right.
And so we have New Yorkers that we basically don't allow back, or others that want to come serve in New York. That's silly.
That's the law that's on the books now?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And it's protectionism for New York schools, but even the optometry schools have come forward and been like, hey, we need to overturn this. This is silly.
Yeah. Okay.
Right? And so I love finding small things like that aren't going to have a lot of opposition, but it's just something that isn't working right in government that can be improved. It doesn't need to be just the big issues, right? Let's work on those, and sadly those can take years, but let's keep fighting. We need to, right? Talking about expanding number of judges is something that'll take 3-4 years minimum. But if there's a small fix, whether it's what HPD is overseeing, whether it's something else that you're noticing in your day-to-day life, and you're like, government could be better, or the things that normally make you say, oh, government never works, here's Exhibit A. Send us Exhibit A. We want to fix that. So website's alexboris.nyc. If you email info@alexboris.nyc, that goes directly to me and my campaign manager. Okay. Send us those ideas. We would love to just make it a little bit better every day.
Awesome. Give me some. Stand man.
All right, well, it's been a good conversation. I definitely would say we are in this preservation trust issue, so we can't do anything about it, but hopefully we can make this a level playing field so the NYCHA residents can be informed before they make this vote that's going to impact public housing in New York indefinitely. So that would be great. Secondly, I definitely want to follow up on this whole HPD things. I think if they stepped in and did their job, then there'd be some relief the NYCHA residents can get now. Third, I guess the oversight of RAD has been terrible. So I guess if you get in there, we can do something better to keep an eye on what's happening now. Because I know there's buildings that have been converted, and it's like they're in the dark, in terms of what's really going on. And we get the calls from those residents, and they're still not getting repairs done. And NYCHA is saying, well, it's these guys now. And they're saying, no, it's NYCHA. It's this back and forth nonsense. But end of the day, that resident doesn't get the work done. So hopefully we can work on those things and be proactive and be a bonus to our community.
All right. Money.
Well,
Smooth Mike didn't say no. You go ahead, Mike.
He's not here today.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
yes, you can.
Remember to vote on November 8th.
Right. Please do. Yes.
We all assume Democrats are safe,
Yeah.
but this year in
Right.
particular, statewide, you don't know. And turnout was so low over the summer because we had those 2 primaries. Please, early voting starts the weekend before.
Right.
Okay.
So you can vote the end of October, and Election day is on November 8th. So please show up.
Right.
Your voice is heard at the ballot box.
Money Mike.
All right. Anything? For me?
Well, like I say every time, make sure you please like and subscribe to our page, One Night Your TV on YouTube, please. And if you want to email us at onenightyourtv@gmail.com. And please don't hesitate.
If you got repair issues, email us too. We'll help you with those repairs.
Yeah, yeah. And if you're interested in coming on the show, reach out to us. We'll see what's what and if we can bring you on. We still have to, we have to vet who we bringing on, so we can't bring on anybody on the show. So gotta be careful. Thank you, Emily Johnson. She's been in the chat quite a bit. Made a few comments, so thank you for participating. Sorry we didn't shout you out, and thank you for all the viewers that are watching that are silent. So thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me.
Look forward to continuing working. Don't be a stranger, and I won't be a stranger, and you don't be a stranger. But yeah, we look forward to working with you, and consider yourself a friend to the show, and hopefully a ally. Someone that can be there for NYCHA residents, and just social justice. Period. It's so much environmental justice. Everything falls under social justice. From criminal to or just everything. Social justice is the umbrella. Everything's under there, and I know you're gonna help create change. And like he said, Alex said, get out and vote. Right? Don't take nothing for granted. Because we can get it. Somebody can squeak in. So vote. Get registered to vote. If you're not registered to vote, it's still time, right? Is it still time for?
I think the registration deadline was 2 days ago.
2 days
but
ago.
but
Okay,
but if you're
still.
changing address, others
Do
that
those
you have
things.
time to do that.
Okay.
But yeah,
still, if you ain't registered, get registered.
registered
anyhow,
now
right?
for the next one. Yeah, don't wait. Yeah.
Because elections are every year, so people.
I do got a
ignore
question
some of
on that. Just how many people do vote, so people can know how important it is? How many people voted?
In my district, we had 23% of eligible people turn out, which was high. Citywide, it was 13%. And so here's the craziness, and it's a thing that keeps me humble too. I got elected to represent 140,000 people. 3,000 voted for me.
Wow.
So you have a huge impact. Turn out, vote.
Wow.
It is so few people that are coming out there.
It also shows that in that process right there, it was up for anybody. Anybody
Yeah.
could have got it.
Yeah.
That's wow.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
All right. Y'all heard it. We learned. All right. One night, one people. We
One
about to
night
lift
to one
off.
people. One night to
One
one
night,
people.
one people.